This is the video for Chapter 3, which says Customize, Analyze, and Summarize Query Data. So this chapter focuses mostly on queries. If you remember from the last chapter, a query is a question that you have of your database. Since you have data stored in the tables, it's nice to be able to get that data out in a usable format. And that's typically done with a query. And this chapter talks about queries in detail. I'm going to start by opening up the file here, A03H1 property, which corresponds to the file that the hands-on exercise uses, starting on page 190. I won't do all the hands-on exercises step by step, but I'll try to cover the material that's in those. So I'm going to double click on this file. I'll enable the content, and you can see that the file is open. This database file, A03H1 property, deals with real estate data. So we have real estate agents, the listings and the properties, the subdivisions that those properties are in, and whatnot. So there's just 4 tables here that we're going to work with. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just save a simple query, or create a simple query. And I'm going to go to the Create tab. You can see that up here on the ribbon. And you'll be creating queries basically 2 ways, with the Query Wizard or through Query Design. The Query Wizard leads you through a series of steps to help you create a query, but most of the time you'll just go straight to Query Design to create a new query. So I'm going to click on Query Design. Okay, what tables do we need for this particular query? Well, we're just going to use a couple queries here, or a couple tables, and it's going to be the agents table. So I can click that, click on the Add button, and then the properties table. I'm going to add that too. You can then close the show table. Okay, up on the top here we see the 2 tables that we're going to be pulling data from. Now these tables you can consider the source data for this query. As we talked about last chapter, the top of this query screen shows the tables where the data is coming from. And the bottom has the grid area. This is where you'll design your query. Just going to make that a little bigger on the bottom. Okay, so first of all you need to know which fields you want to pull and have in your query. Remember, you don't have to have all the fields from these tables. You can select whichever field you're interested in. So I want the first name. I double click on that and it goes down to the grid. I want the last name of the agent. I also double click and move that down. You can also drag these fields down. From the properties table, I'm going to get the date listed, the list price, square feet, and then finally the sold field. That's down a little bit. Okay, so I have my fields that I want. Now remember, these fields are just a subset of the total fields that are in here. I can actually run this query right now by clicking on the big red exclamation run button. And I got my data. There's 303 records in this query result. And typically when you're creating a query, you do a few things in the design area and then you run it just to make sure that what you think you are getting is what you are actually getting. So, I'm just checking here to make sure I'm getting the fields that I wanted, and it looks like I am here. One thing you can notice here is this sold field is really just a Boolean yes/no field. Okay, I'm going to go back to Query Design, and I'm going to sort this the data here by the list price field. pretty easy to do a sort in queries. There's a sort row right here, and under the field that you want to sort by, you can put your cursor in that area by clicking. Use the drop-down list. And then do an ascending or descending sort. I'm going to do an ascending sort this time. That will give me the lowest price properties first, and then it will go to the highest. One thing I also want to do is under the sold field, I only want to look at properties that are not sold. So under the sold field, under this criteria area, put my cursor there, and I'll just type in no. I'm going to run my query again. Notice the criteria is working. So before I had 303 records, now I'm down to 213. So quite a few of them must have had yes in the sold. Now remember, we're just looking for properties to buy, so we want to make sure they're not sold. That's why we put that criteria there. Also looks like the sort worked. So the list price is in ascending order now, starting with the lowest and going with the highest. Okay, once you've got your query, now this is a nice little query. We did one criteria and we did a sort. We picked some fields, so this is a nice little query, and we got it working the way we want it. These are the target properties that we want to buy, or that we're looking to buy. So I'm going to save this query and name it Target Homes. To save a query, I could just simply close this query and it would ask me if I want to save it. That's normally how I would do it. So I'm just going to do it that way. I'll click here. If you want to save, I'll click yes. And I'm just going to call that Target Homes, because that name describes this data. Click on OK. And you'll notice over here I do have a query now that says Target Homes. The next part of this talks about a calculated field. And what I'm going to do, I'll create a calculated field in here. And what they're going to do is calculate the price per square foot. Okay, so the price per square foot, I'm just going to use this same query. I'll open it up in Design View this time. I'll right click on it, go to Design View. So here's that query again. And now I'm going to make some changes. And I'm going to call this query price per square foot. So I can give it a new name. I can go to File, Save Object As. Price per square foot would be a nice name for this one. Sometimes you might have to click back on the Home tab to get to where you want to go. See, that new name is price per square foot. Okay, so to get the price per square foot, I'm going to have to take the list price divided by the square feet. So this is a new field. Just going to scroll over here. I'll create the new field right here. Let me scroll over a little more. To get a calculated field, you just go into your first blank area there. And I'll just type price. I'll just abbreviate this a little, price square foot. So you give this new calculated field a name. This is the name right here, price square foot. Then you put a colon. So that's important to put that colon there, because before the colon is the name of the new field, after it is the calculation. And this will just be, like I said, list price divided by square feet. So I'm using these two fields to calculate a new value. I'm going to hit enter. I'll make this a little bit bigger. You can make this column bigger by moving your cursor right here till you get the double arrow and just drag it over. Okay, so you can see my calculation here now. Access actually puts the field names in square brackets. That's fine. So I got list price divided by square feet. I can now run this query. Again, looking for my run button. Oh, I got to get to the design tab. There we go. See, sometimes you get off the, you can't find what you're looking for up here. Just make sure you get into the right tab. Here's my run button. And I ran it. Now look, I got all these pound signs under there. That means that the value is too big to fit. So sometimes if you just make that a little bit bigger, you see the values. Now, we got a value here with a whole bunch of decimal points. That's not very good. We really want it to look more like this, a currency value. So I'm going to do that right away. I go back over to Design View, put my cursor on that new field, come up here to the Property sheet, and then change this format to currency. Okay, that should take care of it. Now once I've done that, I can close the Property sheet. I can run the query again, and now I got data that looks much better here. Now how do I know if this calculation is correct? How do I know if I type my formula in correctly? Well, I would do a couple of these manually. I would take 30,000 divided by 4834 to see if I get that. I would typically just open my calculator, take 30,000, 080 divided by 4834. Click equals and I get 622, and that's what I got here. Typically, as a programmer, you would test a few more of these, do a few more manual calculations just to make sure that's correct. Okay, so that's really, the book talks about actually going to Excel and doing some of these same formulas. You don't really need to do that. You could just do them manually. Okay, that's it for this first video. I'm going to pick up from here the next set of hands-on exercises.